Time. It's a bit of a bugger, isn't it? With time flowing past us so quickly, it's often hard to realise that a year has been and gone. I found a grey hair on my head last week. It was terrifying. So what better time to forget that we'll one day be food for the world's luckiest worm and talk about some of my favourite things of 2019. A nice way for me to quickly list off a few things I loved about previous year in a teeny tiny Clemps review format to momentarily distract us from the existential dread. In a similar vein to my last Things I Loved video, and let's be real, the guy I ripped this off from, some things in my list don't have to have been released in 2019. I just have to have played or watched them in said year. Just think it makes it more interesting not knowing what's going to pop up. It could be the original series of Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Monster Hunter Iceborne. The possibilities are endless. And speaking of which... Now, my history of Monster Hunter is a little all over the place. I tried getting into Freedom Unite back in the day, and I felt like I should be locked up in the bell tower for not liking it. I'd continue believing I just didn't enjoy the series until 4U knocked at my door, invited me out to dinner, and paid for the bill. I'm very happy to announce that through a lot of time investment, we've been happily married since 2015, and through the miracle of Mpreg, we gave birth to a beautiful baby Monster Hunter World. This game and its expansion, Iceborne, which came out in 2019, are two very strong leaps onto modern gaming consoles. And whilst I would honestly rather play the handheld games if I could, I mean I can, it's just Nintendo tax innit, the game is still addictive as hell and extremely well crafted. The quality of life changes compared to the original Monster Hunter games are very welcome, and whilst part of me does miss how comfortable games like 4U or Generations felt, I can still sink many hours into gathering materials and fighting very big boys, just like old times. In fact, that simplicity is why I fell in love with 4U in the first place. Go out, find a monster, have a comfortably long boss fight, make Peter very, very cross, then rinse and repeat.
That's the cutest fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
I've never liked the UI and how fiddly it can be sometimes, and compared to Best Girl over here, the handler feels like a waste of human resources, being pulled along as bait until the next hyperactive bundle of teeth and pain comes bounding out from their hiding place. Overall though, great game. Can't wait to see what comes next in the franchise. Did Capcom really just give us a Sasuke, yeah, sorry moment and expect us to forgive them for all their years of crime? Because it totally worked. Congratulations, Capcom, you've been hitting it out of the park over the last couple of years, and Resident Evil 2 Remake is just another fantastic entry to your growing pedigree. I think I've mentioned in another video how Resident Evil is a series I didn't jump into until 4. I'd eventually work my way around to looking at the previous games, but it's safe to say there isn't any nostalgia in these tired bones. So it's nice to boot up Resident Evil 2 Remake, play through the game, avoid my overly friendly relatives at the Christmas family dinner, and come out the other side going, this is one of my game of the years. Even though this game is quite the short little number, clogging in at approximately 7 hours or so if you focus on only one character, there are 2 characters to choose from with different stories, and 2 more playthroughs with the characters playing each other's routes reversed. And the fact I played 3 of these routes back to back is kind of evidence enough that I thoroughly enjoyed my experience here. So in Resident Evil 2 Remake, you play as Diet Leon, bingo, proudly wearing his himbo badge for the whole world to see, and Claire, who really wishes she didn't go to school today as she tracks down her older brother, insert meme here. They both skulk around the dead halls of the Raccoon City police station as the city itself has been overrun by the T-virus. A rather inconvenient little thing which turns people into undead troublemakers and what I'm sure baby boomers think their kids will turn into if they fall into the eating ass craze, combining the over-the-shoulder style gameplay of the new games with the limited ammunition and healing items from the original, with fun puzzles to solve and challenging bosses to encounter. It is a perfect remake of an older game. It isn't simply a reskin with flashier graphics. It's the kind of remake that 7R is trying to be by the looks of it. The kind that you can play but still have a separate, unique experience with the original title, and not just invalidating said older title simply by existing. Graphically, this game is gorgeous. The atmosphere in certain rooms put me on edge more than the flesh-eating boys and girls roaming the halls, oftentimes resorting to using the flashlight which barely illuminates your surroundings, which makes encounters like these all the more terrifying. And whilst the motion capture is pretty damn good, I kept getting distracted by their eyes. They aren't bad, but sometimes they just wouldn't track the character they're looking at, so they just stare off into the distance like they're too embarrassed to look each other in the eyes, which does make things feel a little uncanny valley at at times. As for gameplay, it's almost flawless. However, one aspect of the overall game did get understandably old on my third playthrough despite adoring the initial impact it had on me, and that's this guy. Yes, Mr. X. An entity hardwired to stop Leon and Claire from committing tax fraud is an unkillable enemy that will pursue you throughout a majority of the game. For the first 2 playthroughs, it was definitely quite poo-poo inducing, hearing his heavy boots echo through the halls like your dad coming to yeet your ass into the Shadow Realm after you broke a potted plant. But on my third playthrough, he was just kind of annoying, which was initially turned into seeing him more like a progression halter than a genuine threat, since avoiding him is quite easy so long as you snake around a few rooms till the AI throws its hands in the air and gives up. But I would never want him to be taken out of the game. His inclusion made the whole experience for me, and even though it got old after a while, I wouldn't want it any different. The man is an icon. I just won't show up to his evening performance after watching his morning show and matinee. I kind of know the gist at that point. That being said, the game is an overall triumph, warts and all, and it is well worth your time and money. Yeah, Death Stranding made it in. I'm a little surprised myself, if I'm honest. I could never get my head around the game from the trailers. Is this really all the game would be? Walking from place to place with Norman and Twitter in a jar, the occasional stealth segment? Really? And yeah, it kind of is. But you know what? I loved it. I absolutely loved the refreshing change of pace that this game gave to me. Refreshing is a good choice of words there. Because I surround myself with a lot of games I'm comfortable with, I barely go out of my comfort zone at all. The fact that Death Stranding resonated so hard with me despite being a walking simulator stealth game with a high velocity scramble baby simulator kind of speaks volumes. I hear people complaining about the fact that there's so many tiny details in this game. Having environmental trip hazards, needing to calm your BB down if the journey gets too rough, items having durability which reduces faster in the rain, and yes, those are tiny details to include, but without them it would be too mindless. I found myself in a zen state whilst playing Death Stranding, but it was never too mindless to the point where my brain would just start to wander because of all of those tiny details I mentioned earlier. You need to pay attention to the journey ahead. You need to plan a course of action instead of simply walking in a straight line. You need to brace yourself whilst running down that hill, or you could trip, endangering your cargo and pissing off the child. And this meticulous routine was a fantastic therapeutic experience. These features are necessary for the game to succeed. Remove these little details and would the game be improved? Well, it would certainly be more boring, which I know to some people is objectively impossible. Even if you didn't enjoy the game on a fundamental level, the amount of painstaking effort to make this Ghostbuster Postman Simulator the best Ghostbuster Postman Simulator available on the market is impossible to ignore. Kojima was out to create a game that connects people, and spending an hour building a road so others could glide through the terrain with ease, making bridges so people won't have to wade through deep water, and seeing people's gratitude pop up on your screen as a visible result was kind of satisfying and touching in a weird way. So, on a personal level, I'd say he succeeded. It's just nice that a game like this can exist in today's age. A game which doesn't play by any of the conventional rules and is exactly the way the director wanted his vision to be. And whilst I wouldn't be leaping for a Death Stranding 2, I definitely like to see a director's vision be as close to the mark as this one was. Let's hope Project GG turns out to be exactly that for Platinum Games, huh?
Oh my. Oh, I like that one. Oh, daddy.
I have adored the Spyro the Dragon franchise since I was a little boy. Me, Spyro, Crash and Rayman, ride or die bitches. And with the industry's newfound fetish for remastering older games, Crash was one of the first to get said treatment. I was quite fond of it, but a lot of design choices left me feeling a little flat. Now, with the Spyro Reignited trilogy, the same can be said for the final 2 games of the trilogy. The first game is where the remaster really demonstrates how Toys for Bob injected a lot of love and a clear passion for the game they were remastering. Out of the original trilogy, the first game, Spyro the Dragon, was always my least favourite. Maybe it was due to playing Year of the Dragon first and going backwards from there, but this time around it's the opposite. And a lot of creative choices they've made in the latter 2 games just don't sit right with me.
What's wrong with your face? What is wrong with your face?
And these are very subjective things, such as designs or the fact that orbs no longer bounce towards you and instead just remain stationary like a deer in headlights. Allure is pretty cute, you know, that's nice. But these little tweaks and what I'm sure they saw as improvements only make me crave the older games. I love the original Spyro 2 and 3 too much. And whilst I enjoyed the remakes, I played them quite a bit actually, I just think they lost a lot of their original charm. That is not the case for the remaster of Spyro the Dragon, which elevates the game above and beyond its original title. I had so much fun with the original game's remake on the Switch that I had to put it on the list. I think the fact it changed my opinion on the first game this much left a very positive mark on me. Graphically, they did a great job. Compared to the remade Crash's design, where they took sandpaper to make him nice and smooth with round edges, Spyro's design is still very angular and stylized, feeling like a proper remaster of the original model and paying more respect to the game's original presentation. Gameplay is still the same as ever. Charge, flame, wish for whoever made these segments to be thrown into Dante's Inferno to pay for their sins, you know, the usual. What made me fall head over heels in love with this particular remaster are the dragons. In the original Spyro the Dragon, designs were fine. Nice, goofy looking dragons with 4 different variations from world to world. The remaster decided to do a bunch of rails and then proceed to go off the goddamn rails, making it so every single dragon you unlock is entirely unique, but still carry traits from their original worlds. Artisans, peacekeepers, magic crafters, beast makers, and dream weavers. Their new designs breathe so much life into the first Spyro game, making each dragon you release a new surprise. Wondering what new design could hatch out like a really big Kinder Egg. There are some which I give the side eye to, especially after streaming it on my Twitch and seeing the furry and or scaly segment of my viewer base appear in a puff of smoke, all rubbing their hands as if summoned by dark magics. It's a shame after being on the internet for so long, I can watch something as innocent as this and some telepathic part of my brain kicks in like, do you smell Subway?
Eat fresh. Oh, I love
comedy anime. If there's anything to put a smile on my face after a long day, then slapping on something like Panty and Stocking, Nichijou, or Space Dandy will inject that serotonin straight into my veins. But a show came along lately that is now easily my favorite comedy anime of all time. Asobi Asobase was so funny to me that after watching it through once and wiping the big fat tear from my eye, I spent the next week rewatching it another 2 times. No exaggeration, I loved it that much. With an art style that becomes quite recognizable with its distinct pastel color choices for a majority of the show, which makes it feel like it's trapped in an almost permanent springtime, and thin line work which makes it so nothing stands out unless the episode absolutely calls for something that's abhorrent to the eyes. Combining this very soft, relaxing tone that the colors present with some of the most manic voice acting and character expressions I've seen in a comedy show to date. These voice actresses, by the way, for the 3 main characters, they're all fairly new to the voice acting scene. Hina Kino has the most experience out of the 3, having her debut in 2014, but Konomi Kohara had a 2016 start, and Nagae Rika appears to be the freshest new face of them all, only properly appearing on the scene since 2017. And I swear it's if they went into this show with something to prove, or they just wanted to goof around to the audience's benefit. If it wasn't for these main performances, the show wouldn't have caught me off guard as many times as it did. Sometimes a show can become 10 times more lovable if I can hear the voice cast having a fun time. It's why, despite being a very hit or miss show for me, Pop Team Epic is a show I'll return to from time to time solely because of the voice work. So a very basic plot summary of Asobi Asobase is as follows. The shenanigans differ from episode to episode, but they usually revolve around slice of life related issues taken to an extreme degree, or Batsu games. I adored the way the show flexes its muscles a little during the game's Hanako, Kazuki, and Olivia play, making them out to be a serious fight scene than a simple thumb war, or the stakes of kicking your fucking shoe off to see how far it'll go being ramped up to a goddamn 11. It kinda gives me Nichijou vibes in that regard, and I can't begin to tell you how much I adored Nichijou. Long story short, this gets an extremely strong recommendation for me, but if the show doesn't hit your funny bone in the same way it shattered mine, then that's fine. But if you're a fan of shows like Nichijou, Pop Team Epic, or simple slices of life with a comedic flair, then I have a feeling you'll be finding a brand new favourite. Autobiographies are not my usual cup of tea. I'd rather shit in my hands and clap than have to sit down and read the latest autobiography from insert Hollywood actor here that litter my local bookstore like hardback vermin. But if you make the author a regular everyday person, give it a charming art style and throw in a metric ton of relatable topics, from discovering your sexuality to just how crippling mental health issues can be, then my lesbian experience with loneliness, and by extension my solo exchange diary 1 and 2 are must-reads. Written and drawn by Kabi Nagata and her Pixiv account, which would later be turned into a manga, it follows her day-to-day life living in Japan, and the struggles that she faces as she stares down her own issues and documents them in this, as of today, 3-story series. There's a certain bluntness to this collection that just hurts. I say this as a positive, don't get me wrong. It's somewhat cathartic to see someone pinpoint exactly how it feels to have anxiety issues or depression, and whilst everyone deals with their issues differently, it still felt like a cold punch to the gut seeing someone talk about their issues in ways which sometimes related to me and how I deal with my own personal demons. The amount of detail the author goes into this 3-book series is kind of impressive at times. There are points in the first book that go into uncomfortable amounts of detail regarding her parents that were kind of hard to read at points. But I guess when your book starts off with her in a love hotel with a female escort, you've kind of taken off the inhibitor rings early, haven't you? It's because of this brutally honest approach to displaying her life, with the slow realization that she likes women and that she needs help for her mental health issues, that I became thoroughly engrossed in this young woman's journey, and made me press onwards despite how many pages were hitting close to home. After the first book, hearing about how her family responded to the first volume and how heartbroken they were about it was agonizing to read, and you can feel that agony come across in the pages and dialogue. Even her first time in a love hotel isn't given a glossy coat of paint or sugar-coated to make the pill easier to swallow. It's awkward, for sure, it's clinical, and it's so goddamn real. I hope that if the author continues this series, her honesty is something which continues to paint these pages. Seeing her journey has brought me through a bit of a roller coaster of emotions regarding her life and regarding her as a person. My thoughts just swing back and forth like a pendulum, and I fucking adore that an autobiography makes me feel that way. Go check this out if you're looking for a very touching, frustrating, awkward, soul-shattering, sometimes wholesome bundle of adventures and misadventures. If I have to say anything to the author, anything at all, it's that I'm rooting for her every step of the way. Right, now we're nearing the finale, which means we'll be reaching my all-time favourite thing of 2019. Ooh, ah. Before we get there, however, I thought it would be fun to rapid-fire games and shows that I would have included, but left out for one of 3 reasons. 1, I've already covered it on the channel. 2, I don't have much to say about it other than I loved it. Or 3, I want to make a separate video on it in the foreseeable future. Ready? Let's go.
Fire Emblem, free houses.
Fantastic return to form for the Fire Emblem series. Made an entire video talking about it, so go check it out after this video is done.
Atelier Ryza.
Same as the previous title, already covered it. It comes with flaws, but despite all of them, it is still a game of the year. Go support this franchise immediately.
Tales of Vesperia, Definitive Edition.
The best Tales of game I've played to date, and a main character that does something regarding vigilante justice that had me cheering at the screen like a fucking sports fan.
Devil May Cry 5.
Great to see the boys back in action after a lengthy hiatus. It's fun, flashy, cheeky, all of the things I love about the Devil May Cry series, and I can't wait to see what they come up with in the future.
Agretzko.
If you've ever worked with people before, be it in retail or an office, there's probably quite a bit about seasons 1 and 2 of Agretzko that you'll relate to. I recommend checking this out if you already have a Netflix account. Give it a watch.
Kaguya-sama, Love is War.
That's the cutest fucking thing.
land of the lustrous.
Breathtaking, mesmerizing, stylish, and unforgettable. Has me clawing at the screen, begging for answers because it's simply that interesting. Absolute peak aesthetic, fantastic sound design, not just one chef kiss, but two. Season 2 or Riot. Please.
Chromare.
Leo.
Beastars.
I cannot wait to talk about this one in more detail. Possibly my show of the year besides Autobiographies. Imagine if you took the themes of Zootopia and made them 3 times more interesting with topics that a kid-friendly movie wouldn't dare touch upon. Gorgeous 3D animation by the same team who animated Land of the Lustrous. It's just a damn good quality show. Please watch it. I'll make a video on it someday. When? I don't know. Eventually? I hope? Maybe? Soon?
Possibly.
And with that, we've reached my overall favourite thing of 2019. And if you've played the game or watched the trailer, the first few chords of this song will immediately indicate what this title is. I have been yearning to make a series on this game for what feels like years at this point. Final Fantasy XIV, an MMORPG with an infamously documented rocky start until it was saved by God King Yoshi P, ironically ended up being a game that would fill the gaping, wounded hole that World of Warcraft left behind. Over time, however, it would surpass being a band-aid for the hurt that Blizzard inflicted on me like a fucking Morgul blade to the shoulder that never ever heals, and instead grew into my favourite MMORPG of all time, or at least, to be specific, the Shadowbringers expansion. This expansion is what would rev up the passion sector of my brain in order to finally start planning my Final Fantasy XIV retrospective series. 14 has always been a solid game in my eyes, but it's constantly growing with the expansions that have been releasing since A Realm Reborn. For the few of you who may be unaware how MMORPGs work, they release giant content packs which serve as massive chunks of DLC that expand on the world and gameplay, and 14 is no different. If I had to rate my favourite expansions, it would look a little like this. I treat them in a similar way to TV series. Everyone has their favourite series of Always Sunny, right? The same thing here. Shadowbringers, at least at the point we're at now, is possibly in my top 3 favourite Final Fantasy narratives. It might change as the story continues, but the unpatched story left me stunned. Without spoiling too much, it's Warlords of Draenor done right, polished as hell and not covered in shit, going to a separate version of the world we inhabit where the traditional feud in JRPGs, the battle between light and darkness, has been switched. Light is the villain and darkness is the hero, stopping potentially disastrous effects from spilling over and affecting our original world. My favourite element of the game's story was the antagonist, Emmett Selk. His motivations and actions definitely do make him a force that needs to be stopped, but his reasoning and the way the story expands on his past made me pity him alongside wanting to put a stop to his ambitions, giving off the impression of a tired old man who covers up his trauma with a cocky facade. I fell desperately in love with this character, possibly the best antagonist a Final Fantasy game has had since Kuja, if not better, and you guys know how much I love Kuja. And I need to praise the lead writer for Shadowbringers, Natsuko Ishikawa, for her stellar storytelling and characters. The standing ovation she got at PAX West was 100% deserved, and I hope she gets many, many more as the years tick by. I've never been this excited to open up an MMORPG before. The flow of content may not be as plentiful as earlier patches due to budgetary reasons. A crumb more budget, daddy? But the quality is continuing to shine through. Keep an eye on my channel during 2020 or 2021 because my drive to make this 14 series is very strong indeed. And you should be seeing videos on the game before the year is up. I mean, please keep an eye on my channel regardless. I'm very, very lonely and a subscription will cheer me right up. Blessings upon your family, my friend. By the way, before the video ends, I'd first of all like to thank all of you for getting to the finish line, and I would also like to reveal another favourite thing of 2019. That being, well, You. I know that's really, really cheesy, but I mean it. You've all given me a job that makes me excited to get out of bed in the morning. I can tell you all right now, if I didn't have fun making videos and seeing how happy people got, I would have stopped long ago. So yeah, a massive heartfelt thank you for making 2019 such a good year. I'm so proud of the community I've made, and I hope you'll all continue watching my stuff for years and years to come. Before I shuffle over onto the end screen, if you'd like to support my channel, be it $1 or more, then please go to my Patreon and help out the boy. For as low as $1, you'll get into the credits, and for $5, there's a chance of getting a shout out. On that note, this time I would like to give a shout out to Team Zack Attack, Seku, Sarah Moore, and Naoto X10. Thank you for your continued support. It means the world to me and cheers me up even in this weird, wacky state the world is in right now. I'd also like to thank Loudhouse Studios, who edited the Smash Bros style voices during the rapid fire segment. You can find them down below in the description, please go check them out. And my good friend Ed9 actually did the voices. He can also be found down below. Cheeky boy B-Mask helped me get footage from the original Spyro games. For some reason my PS1 and 2 capture card decided to shit the bed a little. So please, go to his Twitter and tell him that Clemps is a fish person. He'll know what it means. Thanks again for watching the video. Go check out my Twitch to see me work outside of my YouTube videos and get drunk a lot. And I hope to see you all in my next project.